In 1936, the world was racing towards the future of small arms. The Americans had the Garand, the Soviets were developing the SVT, but France, facing the imminent threat of Nazi Germany right at their doorstep, did something baffling. They went for a bolt-action rifle.
Hey yo, what the
It was simple, strange, and it was lacking a very important feature: the safety. Now this, at the time, might have been a dumb decision and looked like a relic, because bolt actions were becoming a thing of the past, but with the way that history went, they were forced to fight most of World War II with this aging piece of equipment. This is the story of the last modern bolt-action battle rifle, why it was made, and how its legacy survives today. Stick around to find out. Welcome back to another episode of Dennis at the Range. Today we're gonna be diving deeper into this beautiful piece of history, the MAS 36. If you enjoyed the video, as always, make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below if I missed something. But before we dive in, I wanted to thank the Armurerie Chassenaturepassion, which is a gun shop located in Tours. Well, they were very kind to lend me this and other guns that you might have seen on the channel, so I thank them very much for that. If you're ever in the area of Tours, which is right below Paris, make sure to go in and say hi. Now, without further ado, let's dive deeper into this rifle. When World War II was finished, the French realized that their guns had become obsolete. To counter this problem, the French went with a three-step plan. The first one was to convert existing stocks to the new 7.5 by 54mm cartridge, which is this one. The second part was to develop a semi-auto battle rifle, which was the future at the time. And the third one was to create a cheap bolt-action rifle, which was this one, for reserves, rear echelon units, and training. The first two parts of the plan didn't really go as planned, but the third part, which was creating this rifle for reserves and the rear units, went along perfectly. The rifle went into a long period of development, but the trials in the military units for this definitive weapon took place from 1933 to 1935, and then on March 17, 1936, this was adopted. It was exclusively produced by the Manufacture d'Armes de Saint-Étienne, and that's where the name came from. MAS, which is Manufacture d'Armes de Saint-Étienne, and 36 for the 1936 adoption year. The manufacturing only began in 1938, unfortunately at a very low rate, meaning that there was only 63,000 copies that were delivered to combat units before the war started. This means that most of the French army was equipped with a MAS 36 bolt-action rifle and the aging stocks that they had from World War I, instead of a brand new semi-auto against a really powerful German army. Saint-Étienne wasn't literally under the occupation of the Germans, however it was still in the Vichy zone, so they kept on producing these rifles, but now for the German army. The Germans used the seized copies from the French arsenals under the designation Gewehr 242 to equip their second-line troops and their French militia. Once the war was done, the manufacturing resumed in 1945. This infantry rifle was joined by the MAS 36 CR39, which was intended for paratroopers and mountain troops at the beginning of the war. Subsequently, the manufacturing of the MAS 36 was simplified around 1947 to make it cheaper and easier to produce, which meant that the troops in Indochina were quickly equipped with a nationally designed rifle. Now, the French still had a bolt-action rifle compared to the Americans, which had the semi-auto M1 Garand, but it was better than nothing because this rifle is super reliable and simple to operate. Regarding its simplicity, this gun is comprised of only 65 parts. The design of this rifle has a lot of learned lessons from World War I. It prioritizes the ease of training, dirt resistance, and reliability over finesse. This is not a nice Swiss rifle, this is more like the Russian philosophy of producing in mass and just fielding it to as many troops as possible. As I mentioned before, it was exclusively built in Saint-Étienne starting in fall of 1937, and the serials use letter prefixes, which the first serial number was beginning with F. When production first began in Saint-Étienne, there was a slow initial ramp up, so they made 100,000 in the first 2 years, and then the next batch of 100,000 guns came in 6 months, so they went really fast. The production was paused under the German occupation, which I went over before, but it was resumed in 1944 as soon as the Americans liberated Saint-Étienne. Once the war was over, it coexisted with the MAS 49 that was the semi-auto version, and it was used in reserves until the stocks were plentiful. This rifle saw action obviously in World War II, but it also saw action in Indochina and Algeria. Since it was used in Indochina, it means that some of the Viet Cong soldiers had these rifles, which means that the Americans were fighting in Vietnam an enemy that was fighting with French rifles. It was kind of like this whole international deal. Today, it still appears in a lot of North African conflict. For this specific rifles, since the FAMAS is quickly being phased out by the 416, there's no need to have this in the arsenal. So the French are slowly refurbishing them and selling them as military surplus. This is where this one comes from. It's brand spanking new, and I still have the tag on it, which we will go over later. But this was used in reserve just in case that hit the fan. There was two main variants of this gun, the pre-war and the post-war. The pre-war was milled components and the post-war was stamped components, and there was small differences to make manufacturing easier. Those changes did not affect reliability whatsoever, it just made producing it cheaper and faster. Okay, let's go tip to butt for the MAS 36. In order to permanently equip the MAS 36 with a grenade launcher, it was decided to modify it right after the war. The MAS 36 already featured a grenade launcher, which was the VB cup discharger, but it was removable and it could therefore be lost. Furthermore, it was already quite old, as it had equipped the Lebel rifle during the First World War, and finally, despite its effectiveness, the specific grenade was no longer manufactured. This means that the French engineer therefore transformed the muzzle band of the MAS 36, adjusting a sight arm, which was right here, and a sliding ring, which you could adjust the range with. The forestock and the handguard were also modified, and the MAS 36 LG48 was born. LG means lance-grenade. The grenade for the MAS 36 LG48 was French-made, and with the Cold War in full swing, it became evident that France needed to standardize its military equipment and align itself with NATO. The model 1948 grenade was abandoned, and the MAS 36 was modified again to accept NATO standard rifle grenades. This means that a more elaborate grenade launching device and sightarm than those of the MAS 36 LG48 were designed and mounted on a slightly modified MAS 36. Those slight modifications were a slightly longer barrel and a specific forestock and a handguard. The new rifle now allowed for direct anti-tank shooting grenades and anti-personnel grenades that were NATO standard. This rifle remained in service until the appearance of the MAS 49, which was eventually replaced by the 4956, and then it was pushed to the reserve. This one specifically was put in storage, and now that the FAMAS is being phased out by the 416F, the military is selling these to the civilian market. Having grenades is illegal in France, so this grenade sight was completely blocked, which means that I cannot fully show the capabilities of it. But there are two main positions. The first one is 45 degrees, which has a minimum range of 100 meters, and sighting is performed by using the rear sight notch right here and the front sight right here. The range is adjusted by sliding in and out the grenade stock. So depending on how far away in front this is, it means that the closer the ring is to the tip of the gun, the shorter the distance. You could click this button and pull it out and fine-tune with this thumb screw right here. Unfortunately, I cannot show this on this model because this is for French civilians and the government doesn't want us to shoot the leftover grenades that we have. The second position is direct fire, which is 90 degrees, and it's the position to fire anti-tank and anti-personnel grenades. The sighting here is performed by using the chevrons on the top. So when you're shooting direct fire, the grenade ring has to be all the way in. To fire direct hits, you would align whatever chevron you want, depending on the distance, to the tip of the grenade and then fire. Here we have some different examples. So the MLE 1952, which is a grenade that's anti-personnel and anti-vehicle. The 34mm MLE 1952, which is an anti-personnel grenade. We have this anti-tank 73mm MLE 50. There was quite a lot of versatility, and the capabilities of a shoulder were extended by a lot just by having this system. Let's go with the front sight now. I mentioned in the earlier part of the video that there was two main versions. So the first one was mill components and the second one was stamped. I'm quite confused with this rifle. I couldn't really find a lot on it, but the post-war rifles had a hooded sight because when you were firing under pressure, you could confuse this as the front sight post or this as the front sight posts. So the French ended up on their post-war rifle putting a little hood on top that was stamped metal. If we look right here down below, we see that there's space for a bayonet. This particular one does not have a bayonet, but you could fit a bayonet right here. It's the one that you put it goes inside this handguard, and when you want to take it out, so you just pull it out, flip it, and lock it here. If we go down, we see that it was stored by the army, and there's the receipts right here. And going further and further down, we can see the action. So this is a bolt action rifle, which was very simple to operate, and it has a last round bolt open. It means that when there's no ammunition, the bolt will not go forward. To load ammo, you would have stripper clips that would fit 5. So you would put the stripper clip right here and press down either here or here, which it has this groove so your thumb can go all the way down. And it also has this removable magazine, so it's easier to field strip and to clean. If we go back to the bolt, we can see that it has rear locking lugs. Normally the lugs would be in front, but since the French wanted something simple and that was easy to maintain, they put them in the back because they learned the lessons that in World War I, there was a lot of mud that would get stuck here and it would affect the reliability. So yes, the gun is less accurate, but it's accurate enough and it's very, very reliable. To remove the bolt, it's very easy. You simply pull the trigger and it comes out. So we'll go over the bolt in a little while. But as I mentioned, there is no safety whatsoever for this rifle. So you can see there's nowhere here or here. This means that the French soldiers would walk around with no bullet in the chamber, and once bullets started flying, they would just cycle the action and start firing. Regarding the rear sights, I mentioned that the front sights were from the pre-war model. This rear sight is from the post-war, so there's 2 models, which this is where it got simplified in the post-war. The only thing that you can adjust here is the distance, so the elevation, which means that the zeroing was done at the workshop and it was carried out by changing the rear sight leaf. They would shoot at a predetermined target that had 25 small zones, and depending on where that would hit, they would change this leaf spring. If we go down to the stock, we can see that it's very short. This particular one is very new because the gun was in storage for most of its life. You would put your sling here and here, and this is as simple as the rifle would be. It is very, very reliable and very simple to operate. It served the French army really well. Let's go more in depth into this bolt. As the philosophy of the French is regarding small arms, they really want to make it as easy to service as possible. To field strip this, we here see that there's 2 positions. There's the D and the M. D stands for démontage, M stands for montage. And just like the Japanese rifles, you have to push and twist, and you are disassembling the bolt. So this is what a field strip would look like. It was very easy for conscripts. This bent forward charging handle aligned itself with the trigger, which in theory made it for easier cycling. This, I don't know how true it is, but that was the logic behind it, I guess. Let's take a look at the trigger. It's quite hard, very gritty. I'm pushing, clicks. Since there's a lack of safety, the trigger is very hard, so the gun is going to be quite safe. Now let's go over the markings. After doing my research online, I saw that they started manufacturing these with the F block. This F serial number means that this particular rifle was made before World War II. However, there's some elements from the second version, which was the post-war, such as this rear sight, but the front sight is from the first version, which is the pre-war version. Here we also have this sling attachment, which is from the post-war version. So it's kind of a hybrid. I don't know. It has a lot of signs that indicates that it's a post-war, but it's an F serialized gun. We have 2025 FR with the caliber right here, marked. And in the front of the barrel, we also have MAS model 1936-51. It has the serial number and it has the proof house to show that this gun was completely serviced, it's completely refurbished, and it's most importantly safe to shoot. Because in France, a gun cannot be sold if it doesn't go through one of those proof houses, and it proves that it can be safe to civilians. So this is the MAS model 1936-51. Thank you very much for staying until the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned also a lot of new things. Thank you very much to Armurerie Chasse-Nature-Passion. Again, if you're in the area, go say hi. You'll be surprised with what they have, and they're super nice and super friendly. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe down below your thoughts, and I'll see you on the next one. Dennis, out.